this video was going to be part of my series read recommendations, but I realized that this would have been the 13th video, and I had decided that I was only going to make 12 for that first season. And while I could have turned it into a baker's dozen and thrown in like a bonus episode, I thought it made a lot more sense for me to repurpose it for the readathon that Noria Reads is having over on her channel. I'm going to link down below to her video explaining what the readathon is about, and it's hilarious. And also I'm going to suggest that you get your headphones on because it's a little bit profane. This particular video answers the first prompt, which is F ableism. I don't know if I'm going to do the rest of the prompts just because I have so many other things in the works that have been scheduled already. And I didn't want to cheat and just sort of lump things together and basically do what I'm doing with this video. But I really recommend that you check out Noria Reads' channel and see what she's doing after you watch this one. Remember to subscribe if you like what you see. Today's recommended series is the Matthew Shardlake series by CJ Sansom. Matthew Shardlake is the name of the main protagonist of the series, who is a hunchbacked lawyer who is practicing in 16th century England. When you meet him in the first novel, and I do recommend that you read the series in order because there's a lot of character development that happens over the course of this series, and not all of it makes sense unless you know where the characters are coming from. So when we first meet Matthew Shardlake, he is working for Cromwell under King Henry VIII in 16th century England, which is a wild and kind of terrifying place to live in because the king is very clearly bonkers. This isn't just my opinion. Like, I think pretty much anybody and everybody who discusses King Henry VIII will tell you that, you know, he's a psycho, but he's also just there's clearly something wrong with him. Some historians posit that it's because he had an accident and he fell on his head and he almost died, and then when he woke up he just had a different personality altogether. Like when he was younger, you know, the man that Queen Catherine married, he was apparently like very charming and very thoughtful, and he was still imperious, he was a prince of England, but he wasn't the absolute horror that he became in his later years. Unfortunately for Shardlake, this series is definitely, you know, set right bang in the middle of when King Henry has just gone bad, so to speak. So this is in the middle of the dissolution of the monasteries, and that's why the first book in the series is called Dissolution. It's a reference to the dissolution of the monasteries. For those of you who don't know, King Henry wanted to marry Anne Boleyn, and he wanted to divorce his first wife and then marry Anne Boleyn because he thought, well, he wanted to get into bed with her, but also he thought that, you know, she was young and she was pretty and she could give him the heir, the male heir that he wanted. The Pope said no. Henry tried everything, bribery, pleadings, you know, just all the things that a monarch could do back in those days, and the Pope said nope. And then Henry said, well, if you won't play my game, then I'm going to take my bat and my ball and I'm going to go home. And then I am going to declare myself the head of the church, and I am going to give myself a divorce. I told you, he's crazy. So once he did that, he decided like all Catholics were evil and decided to dissolve all the monasteries, which was a land grab, and also allowed him to take all the wealth of the monasteries as well. So many ideas in one. So Shardlake really is not a religious zealot. Like, he's not, you know, he's not working for Cromwell or for Henry because he's deeply religious and would do anything for the Protestant faith. He's a lawyer. And he's a hunchback, which is not a very PC term, but these are not very PC terms, like, I mean, PC times, sorry. Because you kind of get the feeling that, you know, if he wasn't as well connected politically as he was, he would be chased down the street and pelted with stones and garbage. probably for being like, I don't know, the misbegotten son of Satan or something. The people in this time period are just as crazy as their king. So obviously, with all this craziness going around, as you can imagine, the times are very rife for crime, and so that's what this is. This is a historical crime fiction series. I don't know why the British love their crime so much, but God bless them. Historical crime fiction in particular is so interesting to me when I'm reading a British series, just because the British legal system is so labyrinthine and so convoluted, and every time period it's, you know, things change and shift, and you really don't know what an officer of the law is allowed to do or can't do. What you can be sure, however, is that poor people never get any justice and things never work out for them. It doesn't matter which time period it is. And Shardlake is very aware of the injustices that are happening in his time period, and he tries to do as much good as he can, but you know, he only works for people with title and fortune. He doesn't have any himself. And he's also really grateful to his masters, and he's very conscious of the fact that people rise and fall very abruptly in the reign of Henry VIII. And he's disabled and a lawyer, and people, people have very strong opinions about lawyers today, but back in the 16th century, wow, they really didn't like lawyers. And on top of that, you know, he's trying to find murderers, and he's not like the strongest fellow. And his whole legality, you know, it sort of rests on this guy who's really close with the king told me to go find the murderer. So things are tense. But the prose is so evocative of the time period, and it does such a good job of building menace and also giving you a really good sense of the time period. I read one person say that this is really a work of historical fiction masquerading as crime fiction, and that's not wrong, but I say to you, why can't it be both? Because that's how I like it. This series is currently ongoing, and it starts out with Henry VIII before he marries Anne Boleyn, and then it continues into the reign of Elizabeth I. So it's an ongoing series, and he doesn't really have a very regular schedule when it comes to publication. So, you know, it comes out once every couple of years or so, and honestly, they're worth waiting for. I really enjoy them, and if you're a fantasy reader and you would like to try something a bit more set in the real world, then I would strongly suggest that you give this series a try, because it's honestly one of the best examples of historical crime fiction that I've ever read. And I've read a lot of these. For more videos, please hit the subscribe button.